Hi, I'm Pastor Richard Demsick.
I'm Kate Demsick.
And this is Foolish Faith, the show where we talk about the wonderful things.
And the temporarily entertaining things.
So, like, mimes?
No, mimes.
Because they're only temporarily entertaining?
No.
Of Christian culture. Welcome to this week's episode. For our topic,
Strictly Christian.
That's right, today we're going to talk about strict Christianity.
So we pulled this is derived from a couple weeks ago.
Was it 2 weeks ago?
2 episodes ago, where we talked about lots of things.
I don't remember last week's episode.
Well, it wasn't last week. It was the week before that.
Okay.
Yeah. It was with our youth kids.
It was our youth kids, and they had a bunch of questions, and we answered some of those, if they were questions. Some of them were just words.
One of the questions was...
Good.
Why are Catholics...
No, which is the strictest...
Are Catholics stricter than Christians? I think
that was it. It was Catholics stricter than Christians. We did point out in the episode that Catholics are Christians, although they don't like to admit it. That's not actually true, but it has been at times. I have run into Christians that are Catholics that are like, I'm not Christian, I'm Catholic.
Yeah, that is true. They do exist. Those people do exist. But so we're going to talk about it. Kind of inspired the idea for a video of what is the strictest denomination.
That's right.
Denominations are the different branches of churches, and so just different variations of the same religion, and some of them have a different set of rules. Some of them have different priorities, different characteristics about them. So we are going to pick or decide based on our opinions and the few facts that we have gathered, which is the strictest.
Okay, so the first one we have to talk about is definitely Catholicism.
Sure.
Catholicism is the largest form of Christianity and has been for most of the Christian history. And we got to talk about that because that is definitely, I think, the image that most people get when they think of strictly Catholic.
They think of like going to Catholic schools and getting your knuckles smacked with a ruler.
Yeah, by a nun.
Not a paint stick.
Which definitely
Ace hardware,
makes it scarier. I don't think obviously there's some things that priests are known for that aren't positive. But priests aren't known for being strict.
They're not known for being strict?
I don't think so. It's the nuns. It's
not as much.
The strict,
it's more the nuns.
And here's the thing is that I don't know if this is, how accurate this is. I have talked to some people that went to strict Catholic school.
Okay.
But I think anytime you have someone who's really old, taking care of someone that's young? A huge group of adolescent kids... Mm-hmm. I cannot imagine being 70 years old.
I can imagine being the 24 years old that I am and
getting mean. All those. Like if I was 70 years old and there was a bunch of kids and they were loud and eventually I'd want to pull out the ruler.
Eventually you want to pull out the ruler. Yeah. I mean, kids are difficult to deal with especially when you're dealing with them in large quantities. They fuel from,
and you're not their parent, so you can't.
Right. So you don't have the ultimate authority in their life, and I think they fuel each other. They, use each other. Oh, I didn't do that, she did that, or I didn't spill that drink, she spilled that drink. I don't know. That's a weird example.
And that's when you pull out the ruler when 16-year-old kids talk about who spilled the drink. It doesn't matter who spilled the drink.
Clean it up.
Anyway, my point is that I think that Catholicism itself isn't actually that strict. Mm-hmm. I think it's more that is what people they're thinking about the nuns in Catholic schools, and those might be strict.
Too, that
they're that specific nun.
Catholic churches, generally speaking, are more traditional.
They're traditional.
Now, going back to a talk we had a traditional versus contemporary churches.
Yeah.
Where we battled it out. I don't think we really had a winner, but
traditional.
I would not feel like I'm going out on a limb here at all by saying that a Catholic church might be a stricter environment because it is a more traditional environment. So I think there's a little bit more of the solemn kind of like, you want to be quiet, you shouldn't be giggling and laughing in church, people are turning around and shushing you. You shouldn't be dressed elaborately because that's, you know what I'm saying?
Well, let's talk about that because I think this is important that you, in the very little research I had, that you actually got right to what I was going to talk about.
Well,
so
then.
I was looking up what's the strictest religion and strictest denomination, and I was going through different Christian rules and trying to talk about it. And I came up with an article that was talking about how strict religions or strict denominations were doing better. Strict churches were doing better than non-strict churches.
Like financially or
growth,
numbers?
Everything.
Okay.
Yeah, every category. And I was thinking, and they were like talking about why this is true. So they gave the premise as almost like take it for granted. Like they said it, and then of course you believe them that what they're saying is true, and then they moved on.
Sure.
But I thought it was really funny because I'm a statistic guy. I love seeing the statistics.
Richard, unlike myself, likes doing research and wants to find ultimate answers and ultimate truths.
Yeah, so I want to see what do they have backing up this statement. I mean,
because I wouldn't agree with that. If somebody told me that, I would think that's probably not true.
Yeah, so I was like, oh, let's look into this, So, and it's the same way. Like my psychology class, I ran my psychology professor into the ground. I mean, I was just constantly like saying, well, is that really what it was saying, or could it be this?
Is this the one that said like that he enjoyed questions, he enjoyed being challenged, and like don't be afraid to raise your hand and make points?
That was my science teacher. I also ran him into the ground. No, this was the psychology teacher who was a psychologist for many, many years and retired and thought she'd be a teacher for fun. And wasn't as fun as she thought it would be. She wished she had a ruler, I'm sure. She was not really familiar with anything about textbook psychology, only practical.
Oh, that's right. I know this story.
And so she would always get things wrong.
Yeah.
So and like according to the textbook, it would be clearly wrong. And, and nobody noticed except for me, who remembered everything from my previous psychology class. Anyway, that's beside the point. The point is that here was the actual study. Pentecostals grew at a rate of 8.1% a year.
Okay.
Evangelicals grew at a rate of 5.4% a year.
So they did worse.
By contrast, all Protestant denominations grew by 3.3%.
Even worse.
Okay. And Catholics by just 1.3%.
Interesting. So Catholics did the worst, according to this research.
Yeah. Now listen then what it says next. Pentecostal and evangelical churches typically are stricter than other churches. And that's it.
Now, so they didn't give any sort of reason for why they're saying Pentecostal and evangelical churches are stricter?
Yeah.
They're not going, they're just saying it's a matter of fact, end of discussion. We don't need to explain it because it's such an obvious thing.
I like when I read it, I was like, oh my gosh.
Why would you ever need that explained?
So, because you were talking about modern and traditional, all it actually says is modern churches are growing faster than traditional churches. That's all it's saying. That's what this research is actually saying. The most modern churches, which are Pentecostal and evangelical churches, are growing at 8 to 5%, while as the traditional churches of the non-evangelical Protestant and Catholics are going from 3 to 1%.
I'm very confused by this article.
Yeah, so the article is just, taking for granted the conclusion that they want to have happen when it's actually just proving that modern churches are growing faster than traditional. Traditional churches are typically stricter than modern churches.
Well, yeah, typically. I mean, like if you go into a more traditional church setting, there's going to be a lot more like formal attire. People are going to maybe even look at you if you're not dressed up nicely. And I think not because they're actually trying to be mean and judge you. I think it's just not what they're used to. And they're like, why are you wearing jeans?
Well, the more traditions there are, the more rules there are. That's just the reality of life. And obviously coming from an Anglican here and being raised Lutheran Missouri Synod, which is a very conservative denomination. I'm familiar with traditional denominations, and they do have a lot of rules. I'm not trying to say that it's a bad thing, but they tend to be more strict. The more rules there are, the more strict they are.
Well, it makes sense that a modern church would be doing better overall than a traditional church, because that's why it's modern. It's keeping up with the times for the most part, as much as churches are able to do.
I just had to mention that
I don't think it's whether or not modern or traditional churches are better than one or the other. I'm not surprised that a modern church would be growing faster than a traditional church, because it's modern. It's it's the hipper version of whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying, and my only point is actually just the fact that I thought it was silly that article was saying what it was saying.
Silly article.
It's not really in line with the research, which was saying something completely different.
Itself.
There was no actual research saying strict does better. But today we're not really talking about what's better, strict or non-strict. We're just talking about
what is strict.
What is strict. But it brings me to Pentecostals, because I think Pentecostals actually shows very dynamically one of the things that even is true with Catholics, which is the diversity. Because they listed in that article Pentecostal as one of the more strict denominations. Yeah. Now there's a church called United Pentecostal. It's the United Pentecostal Church, and they are quite strict.
Are they?
They have rules about dress and different things like that, and rules about not drinking or dancing and things like that. And
not drinking or dancing?
Yeah, I know it's weird to think Pentecostal's not dancing.
Yeah,
but
that's...
Yeah, I don't... Are
you talking about like at clubs? Like you're not supposed to go out to the clubs?
There are some denominations.
Oh, I'm just thinking Pentecostals are usually the ones
dance
that
at church.
Dancing at church. And,
and that's what I was going to say is I've been to many Pentecostal churches, and most Pentecostal churches are actually very lax.
Yeah,
very free,
casual,
and very liberal in doctrine and practices. So Pentecostal churches, while there is a branch of it.
So there's a strict branch of Pentecostal.
There's a strict branch of it.
The denomination as a whole is a more relaxed.
That's right.
Environment.
And my point is that's true of Catholics too. Even though Catholics doesn't have branches as much like Pentecostals do, they do have just diversity in the people.
Now, I know you've got some other things you're typing in here, but what about I think you had mentioned that Baptists were also known for being strict, and that was something that I wasn't as aware of. I've never thought of Baptists as strict people.
Oh, really?
But I don't think I've ever really attended a Baptist church, so maybe I just don't know much about the denomination.
Yeah, Southern Baptists are very known, one of the other ones that are known for being really strict. So they're the well-known, there's Catholics with the rulers and the nuns.
It's Southern Baptists.
And then Southern Baptists with the you're going to hell if you don't repent kind of thing.
Okay, I see.
And the Southern Baptists are also the ones that have in their denomination, which I'm going to talk about the irony of this in a second, but in their denomination is the, what are they called? Really horrible church.
Oh, the Westboro Baptists.
Westboro Baptists. The Westboro Baptists, who are the guys that hold the sign that said God hates fags and all this stuff. Now, what's ironic about that is the reason that the Southern Baptists that the Westboro Baptists can still be in that group is because Southern Baptists is actually more laxed on the rules of who gets to be a Baptist. And this is from my understanding. I admit that it's limited. We're talking broadly about a lot of denominations here, but I just think that's an ironic thing.
Yeah, that's interesting.
There's even a church in town, I think we've mentioned it once here before, that changed their name from Grace Life Baptist, or originally I think it was Grace Baptist, and then they added Life, and then they eventually took out Baptist. Because
they didn't want the stigma.
The stigma. They didn't change their beliefs or anything like that, but they just knew that the Baptists.
They wanted to be more welcoming and
not
have people scared off because of the word on their sign. It makes sense.
And I don't think Baptists are actually in the running. Neither do I think Catholics are in the running for most strict denominations.
So, what do you think are the top players here?
Okay, the top players here.
The MVPs.
Drum roll, please. And I haven't mentioned these to Kate yet, so this is all new. I think the Nazarenes.
The Nazarene Church, okay.
Have to be on the category. Now, here's the thing. Nazarene has... I almost became a Nazarene minister for a little bit. They do vary. So one of the big ones with Nazarenes is... They're actually the no dancing one.
Okay.
And no drinking, and women have to wear dresses everywhere.
Everywhere, really?
Yeah. Now, here's the thing. Again... This is starting to change in even the Nazarene Church.
I think all denominations are starting to modernize a little bit, or at least branches of them are.
Yeah, exactly. And the some of them are very free on things like that. And like the one that the pastor that I got close to was a great guy and did not believe the dancing and drinking thing.
Didn't think it was all sinning.
Yeah, so he actually was even okay with drinking. He was not, but if Footloose was a denomination, or based on a denomination, it would be the Nazarenes.
The Nazarene, okay.
So the Nazarenes are that.
Are there any others on the...
Yes, there is also and I think this is a very strong candidate, the Orthodox Church, the Eastern Orthodox Church.
Okay.
Now, this is one where they, like Catholics, often have a very big separation between what you do in church and what you do outside of church. And a lot of traditional churches do have that gap where, like, you can get away with a lot of stuff outside of church,
kind of have that
but when you come, you got to dress right. You got to have all the
as long
rights
as you look
right.
Good on the outside, it's all right.
Yeah, they don't say
that, of course.
Way,
they don't think that way, but that's
what ends up happening. It can even be the case of actually Pentecostal churches.
Well, and I think every denomination can have people like that are.
But what I find is, and this is just my experience here, but my experience is the more strict you try to get people to act in your doors, the more
they're going to rebel.
The less it ends up actually affecting their behavior outside of the church. This is my experience because I think that you're conditioning people to pretend to be something they're not, rather figuring out what the people who really are and what they're actually struggling with.
I think I agree with that. That makes sense to me.
That's why at our church we have the bring it motto of, hey, bring who you really are, be at your worst here. That's what we used to talk to our youth kids about. If you're going to swear anywhere, swear with us.
Yeah, I mean, just be yourself and don't try to hide it. Don't try to polish yourself up or pretend to be smoother than you really are. I mean, because you should just be yourself. Actually, tonight at youth group, I think the theme is keep it real.
Oh, awesome.
I don't know if that's what Robert's talking about, but that's at least
it would be actually 2 nights ago when we post this. But yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so then Jehovah's Witness is my next on the list.
Yes, I do. I think obviously we think of the people that come and knock on your doors. And,
so that's the strict thing that they have to do.
The strictest thing is that all the things that they're not allowed to do.
Exactly.
It's not actually the things that they have to do. It's the things they cannot do. And actually, it's interesting to me because they're so set on it. And I had a friend of mine who... I had invited him to my birthday party, and I texted him saying, I know you probably can't come because I know that you guys don't celebrate birthdays, but I just want you to know you're invited and, because you're my friend. And he texted back very nicely about it and said, wish I could, but I really, it's just not something I can do. And I expected that, so it was fine. But it is interesting to me, and I don't know much about Jehovah's Witness, but it is odd to me that there's so little that they can celebrate.
Yes, so that's the biggest one. And for me, I guess that's bigger than it might be for some people. That's the other thing about strict. If it falls in line with your behavior anyway, you don't consider it strict. Like some people would say, oh, no, I'm drinking alcohol, no big deal. I never have a drink of alcohol. Right. Other people, say, no dancing. I don't care. I never dance. For me, those are big issues. By the way, I was wrong about the United Pentecostals. I wanted to check. The no dancing wasn't one, but here's some. No slacks, no makeup, no jewelry except for wedding ring and wristwatch, no low necklines. These are all clothes related. No sleeveless dress or shirts, no very tight or thin clothes, no dress hemlines or yoga pants, of course. No sleeves above the elbow, uncut hair.
Nothing above the elbow?
That's what it says. No holding a checkbook or getting the mail for women. Women may not sit at the head of the table. No swimsuits, no shorts, no ear piercings, no hair dye, perms, or straightening treatments. And this is one of the things that's really interesting about Pentecostals, especially, because they often are a really interesting mix of very liberal and very conservative philosophies.
It is really interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting mesh.
Another week we're actually going to talk about conservatism and Christianity, but that's not this week.
So we have Nazarene, Jehovah's Witness. What was there another one? Did we talk about another one?
Nazarene, Jehovah's Witnesses, Orthodox.
Orthodox, right.
And then there was one more. Let me see if I can remember, because I did not write it down. There's one more that I was going to mention. There we go. No, the other one that I was going to mention was...
I just...
You knocked it off. It was there, and you knocked it right on my head.
We'll have to, fast forward this part.
Yeah, riding in the cart... Wearing the dress. Amish people. Amish. Very strict.
Riding the cart, wearing the dress.
That's right. Amish. And I have to say...
Put it on a t-shirt.
In reality, if we're talking about strict in terms of...
they do have a very strict lifestyle. Yeah, I think they'd probably win.
I think so, too. In terms of the strictest...
it wasn't a competition here, but...
Congratulations,
Amish. To the Amish.
You're not watching this. So.
You're definitely not watching this.
Yeah. But
I guess we're safe.
Again, to bring it to that, the question really comes down to, in any debate, defining terms, right? You have to first define terms.
Like what is
which
strict?
We didn't actually do.
We did not do.
And I would say in terms of regimenting your behavior, Amish have to win. The only other things that I can think actually would be like monks.
Churning butter.
But yeah, they really restrict your life. On the other hand, again, if it falls in line with what you want to do anyway, it's not a burden.
If it's what makes you happy and if it's what brings you closer to God and makes you feel like you are... fully living for him, then hey, that's between you and Jesus.
And here's the thing, the other definition of strict really comes from a sense of authoritative bullying, like a dictatorship.
I do. When I think of somebody being strict, I think of it to the point of it's unnecessary.
Yeah, like they're bullying, they're telling you what you have to do, they're being mean and everything. Well, that's not the Amish
to kind of put you under
at
their
all.
Thumb.
And so one of the things that I guess the takeaway in my mind from all of this is that, okay, the strictest Christian denomination is Amish, and that's also one of the most forgiving.
Yeah, definitely.
One of the nicest, one of the most gracious. The people and the stories that I know and everything.
Schools.
Yeah, there's an incredible story about a postman that went postal. And forgive the pun, I guess. But he went postal and killed a bunch of elementary school kids at an Amish school. And then he killed himself. The same day as that happened, the Amish parents of those kids went to the parents or the family, closest relative, the family of that person that killed their kids the same day to show them love and forgiveness.
Yeah, it's incredible.
That is incredible. That is not, the mean bullying kind of thing. That's beautiful.
Yeah,
so,
very beautiful.
Strict doesn't necessarily equate with mean. In terms of if you're talking about the meanest denomination, well, then I would say we'll go with a sect, and we'll talk about Westboro. But it's really only one church.
Yeah,
and there's
it's
only
not
20
the denomination.
People.
Exactly. It's just a small group of people that are
small,
misguided.
Loud, annoying people that
don't understand.
Give a bad name to Christians.
Yeah.
But in terms of strict, I have to say it's the Amish, and they represent strict pretty well. Good for you, Amish.
So.
You go.
Snaps.
Yeah. Respect.
Yeah, I think we did it. I think we debunked.
Well, I think that it's important to know that strict doesn't necessarily even mean, not only it doesn't mean cruel, but it doesn't actually mean that it will...
It does not mean unhappy. It doesn't mean unhappy.
It doesn't mean it comes against freedom.
You're restricted from from freedom or from living your life the way that you are the happiest. And, strictness does not have to hinder.
Yeah.
It can actually be the opposite depending on the individual.
If a rule is good, it can be very freeing.
Yeah.
The problem is when those rules become irrational and they're kept for tradition's sake. That's when we get into murky water.
Right.
Anyway, so that's our discussion. Tell us what you think. Tell us if you disagree. If we missed a denomination that's very strict, a mainline denomination of Christianity,
let us know.
And if you think that we were unfair to some of these denominations,
let us know.
We have nothing but love for all the denominations. I don't think we mentioned, well, except for Westboro. Let's be honest, we don't like Westboro. There are 20 people, too. So come at us.
Yeah.
Give us what you got. All right. Hope you enjoyed that episode.
Okay, now I'm going to throw this knife into that board to see what happens. Superstitious or supernatural?
All right, so for supernicious, supernatural...
supernicious?
I wanted it to fit with supernatural better.
Okay.
For this, we are going to talk about something that the church does and whether it is supernicious or supernatural or just super delicious. So today we're going to talk about, what did we talk about before? It was like ghosts or something like that. When we did this, we did this segment
so long
before.
Ago.
It was a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. But this week, in relation to what we're talking about in our episode, we're going to talk about dancing. Because one of the strict religions does not allow dancing.
They don't like that dancing.
Because they say that dancing is all sexual. And they don't allow dancing in church. All dancing is sexual. And it's from the devil. As you know, dancing has pagan origins. Because everything apparently has pagan origins.
I love dancing in church. Dancing was one of the ways that I felt most connected to God growing up. I was always on the dance team and loved it.
That's the other group. The other group is Kate, which loves dancing and sees it as a way that we connect to God.
Music, worship, singing, dancing, that's my core of how I feel closest to God and feel like I'm doing what He has called me to do. You don't feel like looking at the camera anymore?
Ellie, it's rude to stick your butt in the camera's face.
I apologize for my cat's behavior.
She just wants to be looking at us. Anyway, the point is that is dancing, or the question is dancing a superstitious practice that some churches do that they think is spiritual, but there's no real spiritual connection there. It's just their body frailing about like a
like the inflatable tube man.
Like the crazy inflatable tube man. Is that how we're supposed to worship? Or is it, and it's a superstitious practice, or is it a way that we can connect to God?
I think it depends on how coordinated you are.
I don't think it depends on how coordinated you are, but I do think it does depend. I think that's one of those things that it depends on what's going on inside. There's this great movie based on a true story that's called The Chariots of Fire, and in it there is a character who loves running, and he says, God made me for a purpose, and that purpose is being a missionary in China. I'm explaining a little bit. No, this is it. And he says, but God also made me fast, and when I run, I feel His pleasure. And personally, I can relate to that when it comes to dancing. So I am a dancer. I've always loved to dance. And I can express myself in the music. I can express my heart in dance. And it's a way that I can connect with God. And it's been a really powerful way to connect with God for me that has been supernatural. I can tell you it's not been superstitious. In my life, it's been
not at all
supernatural.
Definitely.
On the other hand, believing that if you do the hokey pokey and yet turn yourself around, you're going to have somehow connected to God is, of course, superstitious. Believing that it's the movements that you do. And
it's about your heart. I think just like anything else, it's about your heart. and your spirit, your mind connecting with your Lord and Creator.
Yeah, and when I was a little kid, I loved dancing and worship, and I was known for dancing and worship at that church. But my parents at one point said, the way you dance it's okay, but it would be better if you did more like raising your hands and everything like that. And she said, because people need to see and know that you're connecting with God.
That you're dancing for God and not just to show off.
To show off or have fun or, like dancing like in a nightclub in church. Now, here's my point about it. When I was dancing the way I love to dance, naturally, which I do come from a hip-hop breakdance background, I was connecting with God. I felt I didn't need to be raising my hands and doing the kind of stereotypical praise and worship posturing to be connecting with God, because it was all about my heart.
Yeah.
But I did follow what they said. I did, and I'm glad I did, because I do think it's a good way for other people to enter in. But the superstitious part of worship dance is believing that by having your hands in a certain posture, you're
somehow
automatically connected with God. You can totally do that and be fooling everybody and not have your heart in the right place. But on the other hand, if you let your heart express praise or rejoicing, it will connect better.
And everyone's different. And
in every category. I mean, even when you go to a rock concert, that's true. If you go to a rock concert and you're really excited to be there, you're going to end up finding your hands lifting up.
True.
And you're going to be excited and you're going to jump. You're going to jump. And it's like that's what they do in worship too. So overall, I say worship, supernatural.
Check.
But you fakers out there,
Debunked.
you know who you are. You don't get to be supernatural.